The whispering woods. The forest stood dark and silent. A cold wind howled through the trees. The leaves rustled, whispering secrets in the darkness. The smell of pine needles filled the air. It was a place of shadows and whispers. The sun began to set. Long shadows stretched across the forest floor. The air grew colder. The whispers grew louder. Something was watching. Campers unaware. 5 friends hiked along the forest trail. They laughed and talked, excited to be camping. They were unaware of the danger lurking in the woods. They reached their campsite and set up their tents. They built a fire and cooked their dinner. They told stories and laughed, unaware of the eyes watching them from the darkness. The forest held its breath. The Wendigo awakens. Deep in the forest, something stirred. A creature of nightmares awakened, the Wendigo. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. It was tall and thin, with skin stretched tight over its bones. Its teeth were long and sharp. It was the embodiment of hunger, of cold, of the forest's rage. The hunt begins. The Wendigo sniffed the air. It smelled the campers. The smell of their fear was intoxicating. It crept closer, its long claws digging into the soft earth. The campers, still unaware, continued their laughter. They didn't hear the twigs snapping under the Wendigo's feet. They didn't see the creature stalking them from the darkness. Section 5. A Ghastly Discovery. One of the campers, Mike, decided to get more firewood. He took a flashlight and walked into the darkness. The night was eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. He didn't notice the footprints in the dirt. They were too big, too deep to be human. As he ventured further, the air grew colder, and an unsettling feeling crept over him. He stopped, hearing a noise. A low growl echoed through the trees. Mike shined his flashlight into the darkness, but the light only revealed more trees. The beam of light flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the forest floor. He turned back, his heart pounding in his chest. The growl grew louder, more menacing. Mike quickened his pace, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. He stumbled over a root, nearly dropping his flashlight. Panic set in as he realized he was not alone. The growl was now accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps, crunching leaves and snapping twigs. Mike's breath came in short, ragged gasps. He could feel the presence of something sinister lurking just beyond the reach of his flashlight. Desperation took over, and he broke into a run, the forest seeming to close in around him. The footsteps quickened, matching his pace. Mike's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was it an animal or something far worse? He didn't dare look back. The campsite was still a distance away, and he could only hope to make it back in time. The growl was now a roar, reverberating through the trees. Mike's legs burned with the effort, but he pushed on, driven by sheer terror. Finally, the flickering light of the campfire came into view. He burst into the clearing, gasping for breath, and collapsed to the ground. The others rushed to his side, their faces etched with concern. Mike could only point back towards the forest, his voice trembling as he tried to explain the ghastly discovery he had made.
There's something out there.
Mike stumbled back to the campsite, but before he could finish his warning, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. It was Emily. The campers jumped up, their faces pale with fear. They looked around frantically. Then they saw it, the Wendigo. It stood at the edge of the firelight, its eyes glowing red. In its claws, it held the lifeless body of Emily. Section 7. Trapped in Terror. The campers screamed and scattered, running blindly into the darkness. The Wendigo let out a terrifying shriek and gave chase. Its long legs carried it effortlessly through the trees. The campers ran, their hearts pounding in their chests. They could hear the Wendigo crashing through the woods behind them. It was gaining on them. Section 8. The Final Stand. They came to a clearing. They were trapped. The Wendigo stood between them and the safety of the forest. It smiled, a grotesque stretching of its thin lips, revealing rows of sharp teeth. John, the bravest of the group, grabbed a burning log from the fire they had abandoned. He charged at the creature, swinging the burning wood. The Wendigo just laughed. It swatted John aside like a fly. The night was eerily silent, save for the crackling of the dying fire and the distant hoot of an owl. The campers, hearts pounding, could feel the weight of their predicament. The Wendigo, a creature of legend, was no longer just a story told around campfires. It was real, and it was right in front of them. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding trees. The air was thick with tension, every breath a struggle. Sarah, clutching her brother's hand, whispered a prayer under her breath. She had always been the skeptic, the one who laughed off ghost stories. But now, faced with the embodiment of their worst nightmares, she felt a chill run down her spine. The Wendigo's presence was suffocating, its aura of dread palpable. Every second felt like an eternity as they waited for the inevitable. John, ever the protector, knew they had to act. The burning log in his hand was their only weapon, a fragile hope against the monstrous being. He could feel the heat of the flames, the rough texture of the wood. With a roar, he charged, every muscle in his body screaming in defiance. The Wendigo's laughter echoed in the clearing, a sound that would haunt their dreams forever. The impact was swift and brutal. John was thrown to the ground, the wind knocked out of him. The campers gasped, their hope dwindling. The Wendigo advanced, its eyes never leaving its prey. But in that moment of despair, a spark of determination ignited within the group. They would not go down without a fight. Together, they would make their final stand. Section 9. No survivors. One by one, the Wendigo caught the campers. It tore them limb from limb, its hunger insatiable. Their screams echoed through the silent forest, a chilling symphony of death. Soon, it was over. The Wendigo stood over the mangled bodies of its victims. It let out a howl of victory that echoed through the trees. The forest was silent once more. Section 10. A chilling silence. The fire died down, leaving only smoldering ashes. The smell of blood and fear lingered in the air, but the Wendigo was gone. It had vanished back into the darkness from which it came. The only sounds were the rustling of the leaves and the distant hooting of an owl. The forest had returned to its eerie silence, but it was a silence pregnant with fear, forever marked by the night's horrors. The campsite, once a place of laughter and stories, now lay in ruins. The tents were torn, and the supplies were scattered as if a great storm had passed through. The burnt campfire, which had once been a source of warmth and comfort, was now a haunting reminder of the terror that had unfolded. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt wood and the metallic scent of blood. It was a scene of chaos and destruction, a stark contrast to the peaceful night that had preceded it. The Wendigo, a creature of legend and nightmare, had come and gone like a phantom. Its presence had been felt more than seen, a shadow in the darkness, a whisper in the wind. The survivors, if there were any, would never forget the terror of that night. They would carry the scars, both physical and emotional, for the rest of their lives. The forest, too, would never be the same. It had been tainted by the presence of the Wendigo, its ancient trees and hidden paths now haunted by the memory of the creature. As the first light of dawn began to break through the canopy, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The birds, usually so quick to greet the morning, were silent. The animals, sensing the lingering danger, stayed hidden in their burrows and nests. It was as if the entire forest was mourning the loss of its innocence, the peace that had been shattered by the Wendigo's rampage. In the days and weeks to come, the forest would slowly begin to heal. The trees would grow new leaves, the animals would return, and the sounds of life would once again fill the air. But the memory of the Wendigo would remain. a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The silence, once a comfort, would now be a source of unease, a reminder that the Wendigo could return at any time, and so the forest would never truly be at peace again. Section 11. The hunger continues. The Wendigo was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victims. Its hunger was never satisfied. It would kill again. It was only a matter of time. The forest held its breath, waiting for the next scream to pierce the silence. Because in the whispering woods, no one was safe. The Wendigo was always hungry.